Today I am in conversation with Sherry Jibb. Now, Sherry and I met when she invited me to join her on the Happy and Healthy in Midlife Summit. And it's something that she has put together over the last couple of years as a way of introducing women to other female speakers on topics that really tap into what's the stuff that helps us feel happier and healthier. And I'm going to let Sherry talk a bit more about her background with you so you can hear more. But essentially, she is a yoga teacher, but she's also someone who's been through quite a large amount of change in her own life. And when we spoke, when she interviewed me, I intuitively felt that she and I were a very good fit. So I've invited Sherry to come and talk about connection and specifically the power of connection. And I suspect this conversation is going to be fairly wide ranging. Now, there are two quotes that I want to share with you that really illustrate part of what I believe is so important about connection. So one is from Rumi, and I've actually relatively recently bought my first book of Rumi poetry, having kind of dabbled and seen lots of Rumi quotes on Instagram and Facebook over the years. But oh my goodness me, the wisdom that fell from his pen all those years ago is just astonishing. And this quote about connection really resonated with me. Through love, bitter things seem sweet. Through love, bits of copper are made gold. So obviously that's about one aspect of connection, which is, and he is talking of the connection with the divine. I mean, he was a deeply spiritual being, Rumi. But we can read that idea of love being through love of the divine, through love of ourselves, and through love of others. And there's another quote that I'm going to share shortly, but I've just seen that Sherry has joined the waiting room. So I'm going to put us on pause and then shortly be back with her. So, Sherry, wonderful to see you here. And thank you so much for creating this space to come and talk about something that is so important. And I know from the conversation that you and I have just had, but also from our little email exchange about it, that you've been thinking a lot about connection too.
Well, thank you, Henny, for having me. It's so beautiful to join you, and I love our conversations. And yes, I have been diving a lot into connection over the last few weeks. So, as always, right? Always perfect timing, right? You're
Everything.
exactly where you're supposed to be, always.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think it's always really fascinating to see how these topics, you and I are on other sides of the world, and these topics are resonant in this moment. And for the two of us, having not talked about it before, I kind of threw this idea into the mix. And my sense is always with this podcast is that these thoughts, the stuff that rises for me that makes that I kind of feel like this feels like something to talk about, it's resonating with others too. So it was wonderful to get your reply that you'd been pondering this topic too.
Mhm.
So I shared sort of right at the very beginning, just before you joined, that a little bit about how we met and that you had interviewed me for the summit, for the Happy and Healthy in Midlife Summit. And that when we spoke, there was just this, you know, lovely.
Connection.
Oh my God, it's almost like we set that up. It's so true. That is exactly what it was. I hadn't even realised.
Yeah, yeah, it was
There
for
really
sure.
was. And
Yeah,
so and I think part of that connection is that we've got a little bit of a sort of shared experience, partly through our kind of experience of menopause, but just to sort of broaden that out and just about the experience of maturing, the experience of coming into midlife. And I just love to hear from you and to sort of share with everyone here like a little bit about where your own connection or your own interest in this concept of connecting with others came from in your own life.
sure. Um, Let me see. So where to start with that? So in my life, there has been lots of roller coasters, lots of up and down, and lots of storms. And the biggest thing about connection that I see as different now in my midlife years than I saw 10 to 20 years ago is that connection to self. And that, I was listening to Thich Nhat Hanh last night, who is just a Buddhist monk, and I love everything he has to say. And usually, and what he was talking about last night was how when we are connecting to self, we are coming home. And I think that that is so powerful. And so as I look at connecting with others, I notice and can't help but reflect on my journey of connecting to myself. And as I have learned to connect to myself and to come home, as Thich Nhat Hanh talked about, um, I am then able to help other people connect to themselves. And at this very stage in my life, right, at this very moment in my life, um, I am losing my father, and we don't have much time left. Week, maybe two. And so, in this energy and in this time, I am spending a lot of time connecting to self because I am in very unfamiliar territory. I have not lost a parent. I don't know what that feels like. I'm learning. I'm learning. But at this time, this connection that I have to myself is so important to help me navigate these waters. My connection to my breath, to my body, to the present moment are instrumental for navigating the waters that I'm in right now. And then from there, being able to help, you know, um, my beautiful stepmother, my children, my grandchildren, his great grandchildren, navigate this changing time for them.
So, through the connection with yourself, you are better able to connect with and support others.
Mhm.
And and I also see a thread there of being part of what enables them to connect with themselves and with what they are feeling too.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just to really
Definitely.
honour everything that you've just shared, Sherry.
Thank you. And like I said, it is very interesting. I've been out walking every day, every morning, going into nature. My dad lives near a lake, which I don't often get the opportunity. I live in the bush, so I'm always in the bush with the trees. I don't often get the opportunity to connect with the water. And again, connect with the water. right. And so I've been out walking, and this morning I was out walking and I just went to the end of this dock, and it was quite far out over the water, and I just sat in meditation, and I could feel the water and the flow, and it was a bit stormy this morning. Lots going on in the skies, and it occurred to me as I sat on this dock and just really moved with the waves and the flow of the water. And there was light reflecting, there was a little bit of sunshine just coming down the water. But it was like it was coming right at me. And what I got so strong was, even though we're moving and even though that flow, we've got big change coming right now and we're navigating flow, keep looking towards the light. There is always light. And the flow then changed and the water changed. It got a little bit of white caps on it, and you could see a storm starting to roll in. But yet, in that, I just sat still and just let myself move. The dock actually moved with the water. It was the experience that I needed today to navigate. And, nature again stepped in and taught me what I needed for today and to move forward. Just so beautiful and it was
Amen.
so divinely timed.
Immensely powerful. And I just I love the immediacy of the metaphor as you experienced it. And I shared, just before you joined, I shared a Rumi quote.
Mm,
Through love, bitter things seem sweet. Through love, bits of copper are made gold.
mm,
And it feels like that connection with yourself, with really understanding what was the message that you most needed to hear and allowing that message to come through. Because, of course, in that moment, you had a choice to sit on that dock and go, oh, I don't really like this. It's a bit wobbly and oh,
mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
bit uncomfortable. And oh, it's feeling a bit chilly. You could have stayed right up here, but you came, and unsurprisingly, just in the very short amount of time that we've known each other, completely unsurprisingly to me, you came right in and you really listened and really connected not only with your own experience, but with the experience that nature was offering up.
Mhm, mhm.
Deeply powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sherry. And, I extend with a unified heart of everyone who is listening all of our love to you right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Feels like a nice warm blanket.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there is, gosh, I mean, there are so many paths on from this
Mhm.
place in our conversation right now. And actually, I'd like to offer it up to you, Sherry. Like, what feels most useful to you to talk about now? Like, where would you like this conversation to go?
I think that, in society, we are disconnecting ourselves in the illusion that we are connecting, whether that's through our phones, through our electronics, whatever that is. And we are not necessarily getting the tools that we need to navigate our lives and to navigate the storms. And I can't help but reflect back of what this would have looked like 10, 20 years for me. Uh, you know, and how I would have been, I'm going to use the word, but really a hot mess, just a hot mess. Um, and how in our midlife years, that wisdom to connect to our wise woman, once that becomes available to us, is the key to help us navigate.
I I lost my mother. My mother died. I don't want to use a euphemism here. My mother died in 2015. And on the surface, I was coping.
Mhm.
I cried. I expressed what I was feeling, sadness, all of those, anger, all of the whole range of emotions. But inside, I didn't have the tools. And this goes back, I mean, that really resonated for me as you just spoke. I didn't have the tools for how to really turn toward everything that I was feeling. It was all an external projection.
Mhm.
And I used various tools like work predominantly to distract myself from the grief. And I also rationalized an awful lot of what I was feeling, noticing, experiencing as a way of disconnecting with the pain that I was actually feeling. And I think you're right. I mean, gosh, if we talk about the power of connection being the ability to love and experience loss,
Mhm.
then I think it is one of the most profound things that we can learn in our lives. Because loss
Mhm.
does obviously doesn't always mean death either. It means, the ending of something. So connection without attachment. I've got Thich Nhat Hanh, sitting on my shoulder right now, with this
Yep.
connection without attachment. And so often, the my experience and what I observe in my clients and people that I know is that so often connection comes with a whole list of criteria around how that connection needs to be, or the attachment to what we expect from that connection. And grief, of course, losing a loved one,
Mhm.
you you can't even have the illusion of control over that one. They
That's
go.
exactly, that's, yeah, yeah, yeah. And, you know, I, I, I love what you said about, distraction, because I think that's so, in yoga we teach, or I teach anyway, that emotion rolls in waves. And the way that I feel it or experience it personally in myself is that it rolls up like a wave, and it'll often make me feel nauseous, like I'm going to, just kind of vomit. But what's coming out is the emotion. And, yoga helps us learn how to ride the wave, not distract from the wave, not ignore the wave, but to ride the wave and to allow the wave to release in whatever that looks like. And I find that we're afraid to be with these feelings because they hurt. Absolutely. 100%. You know, um, they do. It hurts. But what I have learned in working with my own body through trauma and working with my clients and my students is that tissues hold, right? Our body holds. And so if we don't deal with it
Mm.
and we don't give it space to move, we are going to have to at some point because it is going to show back up. And I know, honey, that in your story, that you and I have discussed of, burnout, and that it comes, it comes one way or the other, it comes. And I've had enough what I refer to as cement blocks in my life that I like to just I like to connect at the pebbles now because I've had enough blocks in my life. I've been hit enough over the head that is a much. just I don't want to go there.
Yeah, so deal with the pebble, not the
I
boulder.
will.
Mm.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so this again, this loop, oh, gosh, there's so many beautiful kind of threads here. This looping thread back into the importance of connecting with ourselves, because it's in that we can see when something is rising up that is asking for our attention. And and I think for me, that's been I mean, it's just been one of the most powerful parts of what I've learned. It's so funny. Every time I talk about things that I've learned, I always say that's the most powerful thing. And it's like, oh, well, actually, they're all, I mean, they're all so powerful.
Right.
They're all so important. But, one of the most powerful things has been this learnt skill of noticing what is coming up, and
Hmm.
then the learnt skill of being able to sit with it. And I loved your description of the wave. I mean, gosh, the number of times where I've said like the emotion has been so big, it's literally I've wanted to like vomit it through me, the energy of it. and
Hmm.
and at times have stood in our field and made like vomiting noises, you know,
Absolutely.
much to the surprise of
Absolutely.
the cows at the farm next door. But this, because it's like, oh, you allowing it to come through. And so much, I think, of what we are taught with love, but what we are taught is to suppress this stuff, to disconnect not only from others. We can talk about that actually as well, because that was a thread that you raised before, but disconnecting from ourselves through the use of distraction. Um, so yeah, so this thing about what what enables us to connect more clearly, more openly. What is it that we need to practice to learn in order to enable that?
What I have found to be true for me and for as I teach is, and what I always say to my clients and my students is, you must make the time to practice. You cannot create a skill in the middle of a storm when you truly need it if the brain has never seen it. And I have a funny story about that, really. Um, I was at a great big country concert, and I love my country music, and I was right in the front row. And so it was packed, as you can imagine. And this young woman behind me, just a tiny little wee thing, she talks to security and says, these guys over here are pushing me, and not, they're in my space all the time, and you know and so the security guard gives them trouble. It reminded me of the school ground, so much of the school ground. And so the security guard talks to them, and then he moves on, and then they start again. And I have no idea where this came from, but I just turned around, and right out of my mouth was, you know, we all can have the space to enjoy this concert. We have all paid the same amount of money to be here. And we are Canadians, and we need to treat each other with love and respect. And you need to stop. And then I turned around and I was right at the gate. So I was front. I turned around and my energy was just like, oh, I couldn't even believe I'd done that. And I had literally calmed the storm and I turned back around and I immediately went into alternate nostril breathing.
Mm.
Immediately. My brain didn't have to think about that. I have practiced alternate nostril breathing for 20 years. My brain knew what I needed to bring me back down and to ground me into the present moment and to calm myself down. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to reach. My brain knew. I just started it immediately. My friend beside me said to my other friend, who is a yoga teacher and a colleague, I think Sherry's going to lose her, you know. And my friend looked at her and said, oh no, she's already lost it. She's just bringing herself back down. She's reconnecting with herself. And, you know, I, that example is just, to me, solidifies the power of practice. I've done alternate nostril breathing so much, and what I think happens and what I know happens is, and I get a lot of, well, Sherry, I don't have all that time. No, you have 5 minutes every day to connect, whether that's through a walk, whether that's through pranayama work, which is breath, whether that's meditation, whether it's a combination of all the above. You have 5 to 10 minutes in your day. And don't tell me that you don't, because your phone takes more than 5 to 10 minutes, right? And so, but all we have to do, and I know it sounds so easy, right? It sounds so easy. We're just going to carve out 5 to 10 minutes, and that's really easy, and we should be doing that. But it's a point of just how do we hold our own hand through it? And how do we say to ourselves and our brains, we're going to show up for 5 minutes, and then we can walk away, and then you can pick up your phone, then you can answer your emails, then you can have your coffee, then you can do whatever you want. But just 5 minutes. And every day that you show up for that, that becomes more of a joy and more of a tool each time you show up.
I, when I first developed a meditation practice, which was a year and a bit, a year and quite a bit after my mum died. So a few months after I burnt out, at first, it felt like discipline.
Yeah.
And then I realized that actually what I was doing and the way that I reframed it was a gift that I was giving myself every day. It was this delicious gift. And it also helped me cut through some of the attachment that I had to it being good every day, to it being good meditation, to achieving nirvana through my meditation. It just became, the gift was just sitting on my cushion. That was the gift. And, everything else was a bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
So that thing of the practice, and everyone listening will know that putting my hand on my heart is like, I spend an awful lot of my day with my hand on my heart, because that is my automatic way of calming myself. And it was something that I learned. And I learned that when I got triggered, oh, what do I need to do? Okay, I need to put my hand on my heart. And I learned it through putting my hand on my heart, so that when I got triggered, I was able to remember. And now, exactly as you say, it's automatic. So, yes, there's so much in the practice. And it's why we call, meditation, yoga, they are practices because and it's so wonderful, isn't it? How we wouldn't ever expect to be able to um, carve a armchair out of a solid fallen oak trunk, unless we'd
Mhm.
spent many, 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 many hours learning how to do that.
Exactly. Ex-
You
Yeah.
know, and yet when it comes to something that is internal, that is really just for us, or it feels like it's just for us, it can feel like the most impossible ask, to spend 5 minutes on ourselves. And and I think actually, sort of framing it in such a way that it feels more accessible can
Mhm.
often be a really powerful tool. Um, okay, so the practice. And then I suppose there's something here around and what gets in the way? What gets in the way of us connecting with ourselves? I mean, gosh, that opens up a whole stream of thoughts, you know.
I think that what often, gets in our way is ourselves. Our brain wants to keep us safe and comfortable. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that. But when we start to connect with ourselves, sometimes we get a little uncomfortable and we want to run from that. And we want to run from that. And um, it's okay to be uncomfortable. You get to choose how uncomfortable you want to be, you know? Um, and I've had many therapists over the years. And in the beginning, due to the trauma that I had experienced in my life, I was taught how to put it in a box and put it in like a safety deposit box and unlock and just key it all up. And if you can imagine a wall of safety deposit boxes, and in there sits all these little different things. And my current therapist is a clinical psychologist. And his words to me were, get the keys, girl. It's time. And, you know, I was just like, whoa, I don't know about that. He's like, no, it's time. Time to start unpacking. And, you know, I think that not only do we get in our own way, but fear, fear shows its face, right? And we know that when there's fear, there's change. There's uncomfortable and some fear, we need. It keeps us safe and but there's different types of fear I feel or I've noticed in my own being. There's that fear that shows itself and wants me to continue to play small, and that fear is something that I will just take head on. And then there is fear when you feel unsafe, and that is a different fear. And we react to that differently, both through our nervous system and our outward actions. Um, and so, you know, it's not always bliss, but that's okay
Mhm.
because for every, as I sat this morning, as I said, for every high there is a low, for every wave, every white cap, somewhere there's light,
Mm.
somewhere there's light. And trust,
Mm.
trust comes in there too. It's a big player.
So, yes, the way that we get in our own way. I think there's part of this is also about the self-awareness, unlocking. I know when we spoke, when we were doing the summit, and I talked about this idea that I have of Pandora's box, that
Mhm.
we're kind of taught, and it's so it was so interesting to me that you were literally taught. I mean, mine was like a metaphorical teaching, but we are taught to put this stuff to one side, sometimes for our genuine safety at the
Yeah,
time.
that's absolutely. Yeah.
Um, but also, I think often because those who love us don't want us to feel pain. And so they teach us, just put it to one side, darling. Just don't look at that. It's not a nice thing to look at. Pop it in the box. And so we put all this stuff in this box that we carry around with us, our box of luggage. And at some point in our life, stuff comes knocking. And I think often this menopause is one of those times because it's a thin place. It's a place where a lot of our barriers, our boundaries, or barriers more than boundaries, that we've erected to protect ourselves, they get very thin. But I think this experience happens at lots of junctures in our life.
Mhm.
Grief is a thin place. Losing a career, losing a job, being made redundant, that's a thin place. It's where the stuff, the layers that we've used to protect ourselves, they get thinner. And that's when we start to hear the stuff inside the box, and it can feel really overwhelming. But it's also, my sense is, it's such a beautiful opportunity to turn toward that stuff and choicefully connect with whatever is in there, but choicefully connect with it. So it's not like opening the lid and everything flies out like the Furies, Pandora's box. It's not that. It's the gentle opening and then like, okay, my darlings, what here is asking for me? What here is asking
Mm,
for my attention? And how can I bring love and compassion and non-judgment to the way
mhm,
that I heal often
mhm. Yeah.
this experience, this memory, whatever it might be.
And I think as we kind of, we look at that in our midlife years, the lens has changed, the perspective has changed
Mm,
as to maybe when we put it in the box,
mm,
right? And when we bring it out, we can look at it differently. One example might be, say something that has happened with your mother or a judgment of your mother. And now as you come into your midlife, you are a mother, possibly you're a grandmother, and your perspective has changed. You're not that 24, 25-year-old. Your lens has changed. And
mm,
so what was scary then is not scary now. You can be with it and detach from it and understand it at a much deeper level, having so much more compassion
mm,
for both people, for yourself and for whoever. And that's very freeing.
mm.
That's very freeing.
I think there's also something here about that word trust as well, which
Mhm.
is trusting that when something is arising, like that memory perhaps of an experience, or the it feels very it feels, maybe that relationship with that family member feels very abrasive right now. It might be because that experience is actually asking to be attended to.
Yeah.
So kind of trusting that when something is coming up, that that this is the time. I mean, this goes back to what you said right at the very beginning of our conversation. We're all here in the right time and in the right place. And so when that stuff comes up, attend
Hmm.
and trust. that in some way
Mhm.
that's what is needed right now. It doesn't mean that you have to kind of, you know, dig right through to the bottom of the box and like sort everything out all
Exactly.
at once. It really doesn't. You can go gently. And maybe this sort of comes back to this whole concept of connection actually is
Mhm.
that we can both go gently with ourselves, but also if we find that maybe connecting with others can be challenging for us because of our life
Mhm.
experience, then going gently with that too and finding tender ways that we can move ourselves forward,
Mhm.
it's important.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so maybe there's something here about exploring what healthy connection looks like.
Mhm. Mhm. And healthy connection to me with others means healthy connection to myself. And if I'm connected to myself in a healthy way and I know where I'm at and I can give myself the space, that I need and the compassion that I need, I can show up and be with others at a whole new level. This has been one of the biggest things that I have learned, I would say, in the last month. And to really be with myself and what do I need, right? What do I need? How do I need to be there for myself again so that I can be there for others? And sometimes it's not going to be the most popular answer.
Mm.
And that's difficult. That's difficult. I'm finding that kind of stuff used to make me very, very anxious. I've managed and dealt with anxiety for decades, and that used to make me very anxious. That point of even where I'm at right now of not really being sure, not having a frame of reference for this. That would make me incredibly anxious. And now I know what I need. What I need is going to show up. But even that indecision spot where I can't seem to make a decision, and instead of trying to push myself through it, I'm just like, it's just not time to make a decision right now.
Mm.
Right? There's
Trust.
there's trust the flow. Just trust the flow. All will be well. Trust the flow. And um, so I'm having to dig deep for trust right now, which 10, 15 years ago might have been a hot mess. So there's so much value in that midlife wisdom.
So much value. And so, I mean, and actually, I think it's the wisdom that comes with listening to the experience that we have had and are having. So it's not always midlife. You
That's
know,
true. Yeah.
there are many people who go on into their late decades who never find the space inside themselves where they can really listen.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people in their early decades who come to that place,
Hmm.
you know. But I think there is something about the maturity of midlife that gives us um, the opportunity. I can see.
Yeah, they're both empty. I think they'll tell me. That one's not. Okay. The one on the chair is empty. Sorry, we have oxygen.
That's okay. Are you okay to carry on talking?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose just really to sort of honor, different people's experiences of when they
Yeah, for
come
sure.
to this place, but there is definitely a pattern around the wisdom of our midlife years. And And um, I know earlier you talked about that feminine wisdom, and I'm sort of using that term in a kind of gender way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I also see that it is not just, someone who identifies as female. It's not just a female trait to develop
Mhm.
this wisdom.
Exactly.
And I think it's really important that it is a kind of unified experience, this ability to connect more
Yeah.
deeply with ourselves, to connect, and through that, to connect more deeply with others. I absolutely hear this from the men who listen to this podcast. I mean, just, if
Mhm.
I just talk about that, group, I know, I feel those men here now nodding, that
Mhm.
they are deeply connected with themselves or are learning
Mhm.
their
Mhm.
path to connect deeply with themselves. And so I think it's also about this, um, this wisdom is something that is a collective experience, and that to me leads on to, we all have the opportunity, the choice
Mhm.
to connect more fully with ourselves.
Absolutely. We do. Sure. And I find that with men's, um, and this has just been my, um, this is just my opinion that sometimes they can be more connected. They are more aware of where they're at. And they at times seems to be able to lay that this is where I am and have the ability to voice it, right, in a way that, um, I don't want to say take it or leave it, but as I sit with my father now, who has decided to die at home, these are his wishes, and he has been very clear about what he wants and what he doesn't want throughout this experience for him. And it may not be all fluffy and coated in sugar and in the way I want to hear it, but it is where he is at and what he needs. And I know that he is deeply connected to himself and to what he will do and what he will not do in this experience. And I'm learning a lot from what is being modeled to me right now through
Wow.
my father's journey.
So parenting you.
Absolutely, yes. Beautiful. Well said. Beautiful, beautiful. Well said. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And gosh, to honor him, to honor that clarity.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
like you say, I'm sure that there are aspects of those conversations that are deeply, deeply painful.
Yes. Yes.
But the clarity of knowing how you can honor his wishes,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
also, there's something there about oh gosh, I've got this whole thing now of the elders, the
Hmm. Hmm.
honoring those who came before us.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure.
It feels such a powerful place for us to close this conversation, Sherry. I mean, there are so many other aspects of this that I could
Oh, for sure.
explore with you, and I really would love to do this again. You
Oh,
know,
me too. Me too. I would love it for sure. So
and
beautiful.
and for now we send you so much love.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me and just allowing me to be vulnerable and to be authentic in this conversation. Such a beautifully authentic conversation. And I'm at a point now in my life, I like to show up for authentic conversations,
Me too.
as I know you do. Right? And if not, you know what? I really don't want to show up.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
yeah. And so, yes, with a smile in our hearts, we
Yeah.
send you all our love.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. I just wanted to come back here for a moment. Um, Sherry just shared that she found the space to speak here to be a really useful place for her to be right now. And so I want to thank all of you for being here too and for helping to hold this space. And whatever experiences you're having right now, in this moment, in this time in your own life, I just want to honour those experiences and to send you the collective love from the whole of this beautiful community that listen here, that gather together here. And if there's ever anything that you need to talk through, you know where I am. And I send you a hug and a wave.